Laura.
Hey, Namrata. So nice to
So,
see you.
so nice to see you too. So today we're going to kind of continue our sessions and our chats and our discussions um, around, life as a clinician compared to career changes, which is one of the hottest topics behind closed doors in the dental space and the hygiene space. So I thought I'll kind of initiate this conversation and get your inputs because you've been in the same journey that I have, and we've both gone on our own tangents of how to figure out the career side of things as well as the life side of things. And I think a lot of people probably want to hear two normal people talk about what that journey felt like. So that was my plan for today.
We're pretty normal. I think that's good.
I mean,
But I love that word because, sometimes when people look at us, they're like, "Oh, I couldn't do that." But we really are normal people. And we
yeah,
went through feeling stuck as well. So if we could change, then anybody can change. Or I'll speak for myself. If I could change, I
yeah,
was so stuck, anyone can change. So we are
exactly.
normal and weird.
Yeah, and that's the good part because then we get to do cool stuff like this, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So my first question is, when you look back at your career um, in clinical dentistry, what were the biggest issues that you felt were burning you out, and what kind of changes did you do that helped you out the most?
Mm. I'm going to start with the culture of
Mhm.
dentistry. Is we have
Yeah.
this culture that is a bit hustle culture, and I think it's not just dentistry. I think it's life. And so many of us came from families where our parents encouraged us to really strive for the ultimate. And really, they want us to be happy, but they also want us to be safe and
Mhm.
secure. And so this hustle culture, look, it's important to work. We all want to have purpose in our lives. And if we can approach work with a little less of that pressure now I'm learning it's about using that to create my worth as a person
Hmm.
versus it's like a fine line between using your work and your achievements to feel purposeful and excited and engaged in life versus your ulterior motive is to create this worth that we all inherently have. So this hustle culture,
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't work hard. I'm saying, can we still show up, but also recognize that there may be other ways to define success? And over the years, I learned, I never knew this because
Hmm.
I never wanted to own a practice.
Hmm.
But I learned in recent years, probably about the last 10 years, that there are a lot of dentists who feel less than because they don't want to own a practice. They feel like they're not
Ah,
as successful. Do you
that's
guys have that in your part of the world?
so my part of the world is fragmented to the nth degree. So there's Asia and Europe as my two core areas of
Mhm.
clinical experience. Asian culture is it's like hustle is supposed to be in your DNA.
Yep.
It's just the culture, and absolutely true to your point. We are also raised to prioritize hard work. The more hard work you put in, the happier you'll be. And it is a nationwide or continent-wide phenomenon which happens after 10 to 15 years of practice where you're kind of not feeling as happy as you thought you should have been. And so then but your system is so used to that grind and that constant wake up at 6, come back home at 10. Like, you're just working, working, working. And now this patient called and now that appointment shifted. And that just becomes too much of a norm where you forget what normal even means. And it's those little Sundays where you get to go out with your family for a relaxed break with no disturbance on your phone. That becomes a luxury, which is insane because that's supposed to be most percentage of your normal day-to-day life. And you shouldn't have to feel like, oh, it's really quiet today because you're used to so much noise. So Asia definitely has hustle culture too much, a bit too much in its DNA. And I reckon that people don't even recognize what calm actually means until they're much older, with 30 plus years, and the kids are settled now and they've got married, and now I can finally relax, which is by the time your health starts popping up into this um, behind the scenes, unseen new thing that pops up at later age. So I'm not really sure if people really know what it feels like, but there is definitely a lot of internal tension, internal desires. Oh, I should have done this, I could have done that, but you're so stuck in the daily grind that it's very hard to come out. Um, Europe is different. Europe is more relaxed in terms of patient intake compared to Asia, but there is a desire in European clinicians to be somebody. So they are looking for avenues on how to be more well known in their peer groups from a relatively younger age. So they will be seeking opportunities to, like you said, open more practices because that somehow ties into self-worth. And they're not so much into management of clinics. It is a very acquisition friendly place. So getting acquired, selling your business, your clinic is kind of a goal for a lot of clinicians in Europe. DSOs are not so common here yet. It's popping up more and more now, but they're kind of following the trend. Um, but overall culture is you have your independent practice, you have multiple practices as a clinician, and most of them in the first 20 years are just striving to reach that goal, and speak and go to local events and end up on a stage somewhere. So these are kind of the differences that I've seen. But at the end of the day, it all leads to burnout. You're kind of dissatisfied with some element because you've been doing the same thing for too long and you want something new to kind of create a new experience. And people don't know because they don't know where to go to find that new.
That's a great point because one of the things I always say is, of course, you're going to get burned out doing the same thing every day for your entire life.
Yeah.
And so, talk about the systemic parts of dentistry and the culture of dentistry. This belief that you're going to choose this and you're going to, it's your marriage. It's your career marriage. You're going to be married forever. You're bound to it. It's never going to change. Who wouldn't get burnt out doing that?
Yeah.
Just even if it's the normal stress that's not like the people who I see really get burnt out are the ones who, as we're to tie this into the hustle culture, is
Hmm.
we think we have to be perfect at everything. So
Yeah.
we want to show up as being the hero to our patients. And we cross that fine line between responsibility and burden.
Hmm.
And so if you are responsible for what you are doing, you're not carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. But when you start to believe that you have to control everyone's experience and make everybody else have the easiest, no problems.
Hmm.
Sometimes life brings us problems. And as dentists, we want to prevent all of our patients and our staff, our team from experiencing any pain. Look at how that shifts you into total burden, weight on your shoulders. That's burnout right there.
Yeah.
And so if we compare the the perfectionism in the way we approach our hustle culture and then the boredom of doing the same thing every day of your life for so many years because that's what's expected of you.
Mhm.
There's the perfect recipe, isn't it?
And it kind of goes down to like, if I have to do the exact same thing, we're also training our clinicians to take on authority and not delegate. And I think that not delegate part is I'm supposed to be the boss. I'm supposed to be managing everything. And it doesn't, we're not giving them the tools on business management that you cannot do everything by yourself, especially when you're trying to um, try out different things by expanding clinics or trying speaking opportunities. You cannot, as a single human being, do all that. And you need partners, you need certain groups which you can delegate to in order to manage everything that you want to take on. But I sometimes feel like we're not telling people enough on how the art of delegation actually happens. And that's why we take on so much and we keep putting more and more and more because it's hard to say no. And then we're kind of sick of it. And then the worst thing is when you see people say, F this shit, I'm stepping out. I don't want to do dentistry anymore. Then they just completely go into completely different businesses. Um, not leveraging all the skill that they've built up over the past years. So very human reactions can be navigated, but hopefully people through you and me find those initial step-ins. Okay, this is how you started dressing. Okay, this is the step forward. The doing is on them. We're basically the people who give all the resources, but if they're really burnt out, they need to change. If change doesn't happen, I don't see anything really progressing, to be honest. But yeah, I think that's a good point. What about your coaching experience? So you've been coaching for a while now. And remind me again, are you coaching only healthcare professionals or do you do all kinds of people?
Mostly dentists. I would say, and if it's not a dentist, it's a hygienist.
Yeah,
So I don't even branch out of dentistry
yeah,
because people say you should branch out of dentistry,
yeah,
and I don't really want to because I
yeah.
love our community and I get it. I get
Yeah.
us. The people I coach are who I used to be.
Yeah,
And so I know what they're
yeah.
experiencing and what kind of help they want. So,
So
and
when
what
you
about you? Are you still are you focused only
I
dentistry?
started with just dentists, and then I quickly recognized the hygienist space in the US specifically, because again, my clinical experience was more from Asia and Europe. And I was just unaware about this whole hygiene group in the States. And then the more conversations I had, and the more I started meeting people like you and the wonderful community that's already developed there, I learned very quickly that, hold on, hygienists are going through the exact same troubles and issues. So obviously, since I'm driving an educational program, nobody would say no to this whole group who also requires these skills in order to feel more fulfilled. So started off with dentistry, now branching into hygiene as well. So it's become a similar audience as yours.
Yeah. And we're the same.
Yeah.
Dentists and hygienists, I don't
Yeah.
know if you guys have this in Europe, but here in the US right now, there's a lot of tension.
Hmm.
There's
There
a
is.
lot of finger pointing
Yeah.
and you know, different sides, but we are the same when it comes
Yeah.
down to it. We are people in this healthcare profession who care about others, and we have the same patterns and the same dreams and the same dysfunctions. We're the same when it comes down to
It's
being
so
humans.
perfect you said that because I had the exact same feeling when I was interviewing hygienists compared to dentists. And I'm like a neutral third person. I don't present myself as, I'm not an active clinician anymore, right? So I'm the
Mhm.
person who's here to help you. And you immediately hear this finger pointing. You're absolutely spot on. And it immediately makes me go into a place of, I can so understand this person's pain, but I think both sides need to step into each other's shoes and start living the experience to really understand, at least talking about the shared experience in order to understand that we're not that different. It's eventually it's a system, it's the industry, it's how it's designed, that adds to these issues which are being felt on both ends. But yeah, I wish the finger pointing would be a bit lesser than normal. Yeah.
Yeah, bit by bit.
Yeah.
Hopefully, and I have some friends who are talking about it too. Bit by
Yeah.
bit, let's
And
change
that's
that. Get the fingers to go like this. And
yeah.
what can
And
I do? You
yeah,
know?
and it's more like what we're doing now is very so in my program it's very interesting because I have a dentist on my accountability call weekly and I have a hygienist sitting there together. And we're all working through the exact same concepts and everybody's like, oh, okay, because now we're stepping out of that space of clinics into something different. And I think that's where the connection happens. You have to make everyone step out of that space where the finger pointing is happening, and you have to give a new space to them where they can really connect as people outside of the titles, outside of the coats,
Mm.
and the environment. So that's interesting. The fun bit is that we get to play with digital, online. We're doing this online instead of actual physical places, which is a new experience for me because um, I was more used to the face-to-face, in-person sessions. But I think it's good. Um, what are the common misconceptions or myths that you experienced through your coaching experience that you felt your clients were telling you about traditional dental work? Were there any myths that you have to often break when you're talking to this group?
Do you mean myths about transitioning away?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the way we got into dentistry is a very clear path. And you have to plan it first. You have to say, I'm going to go to dental school. You have to commit before you even take any steps because then you will take your admission tests and then you'll apply to dental schools. You have to commit and create your plan forward. And so we think that, so it's not easy to get into dental school, but it's simple in that sense. It's a very clear path.
Mm,
Once we get here, getting out or shifting or changing it in any way is not a clear path. So
mm,
we think that what worked to get us in is what's going to work to change. And it almost never works because what happens is if you think you need to have the perfect plan B all mapped out, you're never going to take a step because it becomes too overwhelming. You can't even envision how you would do it. What if it's something that you don't end up liking, kind of
mm.
like what happened with dentistry?
Oh, that's like a
And
hush hush, don't say that out loud kind of situation.
yeah, and like we lose trust in ourselves,
Yeah.
right? Because I thought choosing dentistry, I thought it was going to be my dream career. So now, once I'm in here, how can I trust that I even know myself or what I want? And it's a huge block for people. And so this is where I see people get stuck is I have to have it planned. Oh, because what happens is if you could get a list. And here's my other myth is that we think the answers are outside of us.
Mm,
So what are typical jobs the dentist can do?
mm,
And that is great to a point. Get ideas. That's amazing. But when you haven't looked inside at what
mm,
you want and you're thinking you need to have the perfect plan B, you're going to get a list of things that you're going to just check off. Nope, that wouldn't work. I don't want to work evenings. Nope, that doesn't work. I don't want to
mm,
have my own business. Nope, and nothing's going to be good enough. Nothing's going to be as good as your known,
mm,
oftentimes misery.
mm,
And so you stay stuck. And the real way to create change is to open yourself up, get into your more creative thinking mind. We don't think we're creative as dentists. You don't have to be a painter to be creative. It could be creative thinking, but we have to allow that. And then action
mm.
is the most important thing. So if we can create small action steps where that's where you're exploring. See, you would never know how you felt about dentistry until you invested all your time and money in it and then sat in that chair day after day to experience it. So if we're stuck on this plan, this mental plan written out, then we don't even know. So the much safer way is to get some answers, do some planning, but then find a way to try it out in a way that's not going to cost you a lot of time, not going to cost you a lot of money. So if it doesn't work out, worst case scenario, you've learned more. It's like dating your
Yeah.
career. Worst case scenario, you've learned more about what you want, but you're not really out a lot. And that's the beauty of dentistry. It allows
Mm.
us to explore and play on the side. And when you stop putting so much achieving pressure into it and
Yeah.
start allowing yourself to play, you will open doors.
And
They'll
I
just
think,
open for you.
yeah, and I love that because the point you really made there is the amount of effort that goes into getting into dental school is huge, regardless of where you are in the world. In places like the States, there's also a massive cost involved, even in Asia, right? In Europe, you can enter a free system as well. So they're more better managed in that sense. But that cost to pay back the loan is huge on your shoulders. But the amount of effort that is put into the actual process of simply getting in and then going through is so huge compared to any kind of internal feeling after a few years of, oh, I don't think I'm enjoying this anymore. Like, and then you're kind of contradicted inside of your own soul and you're like, but I went through so much. And now, how can I even have these thoughts of doing something else? And now you're internally contraindicating your own thoughts plus externally. So you're also fearing what people might say, which is like, oh, why did you become a dentist if you just wanted to do that? Like, and you're fearing these all self-made dialogues in your own head, oversensitizing oneself to these things, which frankly aren't even happening until you do something. It's just all cooked up. And that I think kind of leads to that ability of people to just go back into the shared misery, like, the known misery. Okay, I might as well just keep doing. And then a few years go by, and then you're exactly in the same place, and you're like, is this the rest of my life? Well, yeah, it kind of is. If you don't act on it, like you said, action is key. But then you can't really complain. At the end of the day, sometimes you have to put your coach hat on, at least I do. And I gently serve this information that you have to choose. You either stop pointing fingers and make a change, or you completely commit to this experience and don't complain about it. You have to make a choice there in order to grow as a soul and not become overly critical as you grow older. So I absolutely love that. I think that effort versus results um, question is something that needs to be spoken more about, because people like you and me can say, yeah, the effort was huge. I was actually amongst the university toppers in my batch, so I did extremely well academically, and I did extremely well in my clinical practice. And I was always well known. So if you go to my scrapbook, in fact, I saw it a few years ago. I happened to come across my really old scrapbook on the last day of college. We all filled in each other's, sign off books that we used to share with each other with nice messages to each other. And everybody was like, oh, this is the person that you have to look out for in the future. She's going to do something. And it was mostly clinical because I was strong in research. I really had a good ear with the teachers. I really knew what I was doing. I was good at teaching as well. And then imagine my dilemma where I was like, after a few years, and I'm like, what happened? I'm here. It's kind of like that Gilmore Girls serial where you have Lorelai and I don't know if you know that show, but there's this girl who's extremely smart. Um, Rory, right? That's her daughter. And she's extremely smart. And then finally she says, I can get into Stanford, I can get into this and this and this. And then she ends up in a totally different path to what was actually envisioned for her by the peers and by the society. So
Mhm.
I really connected with that message at some point. And then, yeah, finally I realized that, hey, I'm not doing too bad today either. Yes, I went through the pits and falls, but I look back and I'm like, I think I somehow made it work because I kept saying yes to the right opportunities that I felt intuitively were right for me. And I built this career out of scratch, stepping out of the clinical world because I had no choice. So when you surround yourself with people who've done it, you suddenly see that, oh, it's not that complicated. And people who do step out are actually getting more respect from their peers, contrary to what you're cooking up
Mhm.
here. Uh, People look at them with more respect because they dared to do something different and actually went through the process. So I absolutely love that. Thank you. Um,
Beautiful. Love that.
yeah. Okay, my last question. You mentioned DSOs, and I've been talking about DSOs. We're looking at the trends. We're looking at the behind the room conversations of dentists not being happy with the shifts that are happening in our healthcare system. We're looking at the emotional dissatisfaction of the career in the back end. Hygienists are definitely more verbal because they need to be, because it's definitely a bit more skewed against them, in my opinion. And I think it's a bit unfair on the expectations that we're having for them to just, make ends meet. But at the same time, for dentists, it's a very hush hush space because we're definitely, as a society, not allowing them to even voice what they really feel. So they're really keeping it inside them. And it really takes a lot of effort to get the truth out. So the pain is exactly the same, but what do you see as these trends as we move forward in dentistry, which might take over um, in the US space or in the global space? And what do you see as kind of the options that people will lean towards as we grow into the next decade or so in terms of non-clinical roles, etc., like as
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
clinician stepping out of it?
Well, it certainly looks like DSOs are taking over, doesn't it? So I'm assuming that that's going to continue to be the trend. And it's interesting, though, as you talk about the difference between how the hygienists are expressing themselves and the dentists are not. I think there's such great power in expressing yourself
Hmm.
because then you don't hide it inside. And as we continue these talks, Namrata, you'll probably notice me say this over and over. One of my favorite Brene Brown quotes is that isolation breeds shame and
Mm,
empathy kills shame. And so when you aren't talking about what's going on for you, you're keeping yourself isolated and you're remaining, and that builds shame.
mm,
And so this is why I really admire, and I think there is a slight cultural difference for hygienists, is not only you said that they have to speak up for themselves, but also it's a little safer for them to
mm,
speak up for themselves
yeah,
culturally.
mm,
Whereas dentists are afraid that their whole I've got this business
yeah,
that's riding on me, it's going to be taken down if I express any sign of weakness.
exactly.
And as we talk about these trends, when I became unhappy in my third year of practice, it was 2004.
Hmm.
Nobody was talking about burnout at all in
Yeah, I
any
remember.
career,
I remember.
right? Yeah.
Burnout is like
And
literally a new term, a relatively newer term in the
yeah,
practice.
I mean, we knew about it, but
Yeah.
li- like you couldn't be burnt out 3 years into practice because you were
Mm,
too young. Burnout only happened to people
yeah.
who were older and been doing it for 20 years,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And then in 2011, when I hit that point where I was like, okay, I need to leave dentistry, still, no one was talking about
Yeah.
burnout and no
Yeah.
one was talking about changing from clinical. So,
Mm,
this trend that we've really seen is now in 2011, when I wrote 10 reasons your dentist probably hates you too, that was a shock to
yeah.
the world
Yeah.
because no dentist would ever say that publicly.
Yeah.
And I was still anonymous doing that,
Yeah.
by the way.
Yeah.
And now people are talking about this stuff a lot more.
Mm,
So I want to believe that we're having a cultural shift. When I started my coaching business, one of my missions and vision for it was to change the dialogue in dentistry.
mm,
So, how can we begin to say we get to take care of ourselves too? And
mm,
we get to design these lives that aren't just fitting into this external vision of success. So I'm not really sure what the clinical trends will be, but the
mm,
more we can have these conversations and the more we can recognize that cliche or I don't know if it's a cliche, but that example that people talk about how when you're on an airplane, you have to put the oxygen mask on
yeah.
yourself first.
Yeah.
The more we can shift that way, the
Mm,
more permission we're going to get to just say, you know what? I can still have a valuable life and not have to suffer my way through it. I can still be worthy and valuable and
yeah.
meaningful and impact the world without having to be a martyr and without having to suffer. So I love to focus on that side of things. And since you're more in the corporate world, I'm curious to know your answers to that question.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I love your approach to it. I definitely agree that we need to shift the mindset on this is not a weakness if you find another career for yourself and you can do both for a while and then choose which one works better for you, simply put. So we need to relearn how we speak to ourselves up here in our own heads using certain terms. But yeah, in terms of trends, I think DSOs are definitely picking up. There's a lot of private equity coming in into the States specifically, um, which is driving a lot of those clinicians who actually sell their practices. It's a whole different group. So they're somewhere in there between 45 and 55. It's that group who've now reached a place where they're now selling. And then they feel like, oh, what do I do now? Because I thought this was going to get me there, but there never existed. And I
Mhm.
was trying to get there, whatever there is. But now that I'm here, oh, it's like, what? Who am I? So there is definitely a trend of people thinking that, okay, I will grow my practices, a lot of effort, still a lot of healthcare being delivered to a lot of patients. Of course, we need that service. Um, but we still need to open up the conversation a bit sooner in that journey of a career for a clinician and a hygienist, which is you're going to reach here in 10 years. So here are the options you can have in order to make sure you don't hit that point, which is XYZ. And then in another 10 years, you're going to reach this place. So make sure you have these options so that you don't hit that point. And then, health will start coming up in the third decade. And then you want to make sure you have these options so that you don't hit that point. that roadmap is kind of the whole conversation of what we're trying to build here. Um, and in terms of trends, you will see a lot of high achievers, high performers open a lot of careers. This is something I've been saying for the past 2 years, not just dental, but in any industry. A lot of high performers will step out of whatever career they have and they will open businesses and they will start leading a lot of their own ideas. And this is a normal trend because it's easier to do that. It's easier to open businesses. You've got chat, you've got AI tools now to facilitate you. So a lot of that high crux, high performing group will step out and they will become their own independent businesses. And then the places where they worked will hire them again at 3 times, 5 times the rate to get those services back. And then these guys will train and build the next generation of skilled professionals in order to then keep driving that new alternate reality, which is this entrepreneur kind of savvy space that we're now stepping into. And I think a lot of clinicians will take advantage of that. I think either they're going to invent their own products, become dental entrepreneurs themselves because they've worked in clinics long enough and they've seen gaps, and they'll say, I want to build this product. And thankfully, we are now trying to create, at least in my business, we're trying to create that pathway of, okay, if you are an early entrepreneur, innovator, here's the resources you need to make that vision true. Um, or you're going to see a lot of people shift careers within the same industry. So they're trying to bring everything they learned at higher rates in order to build a safe, secure financial alternate so that they can step out of environments successfully and confidently when it's not working out anymore in the other space. So that's what I think this is the next 30 years that we're going to see um, in the dental space specifically.
That's a great compliment to the other side, the other vision that I was sharing. And I'll share this other thing is I have a friend who does similar work to, I would say she actually is a hybrid of what you do and what I do in medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And she started her coaching business 10 years before I started mine. And I met her. She randomly found my website and emailed me out of the blue in 2020. And
Mm-hmm.
she said, I've been hosting these live summits about non-clinical and non-traditional careers in medicine. And I would love to help expand that into dentistry. And so we
Yeah.
created these summits that we did virtually because it was 2020.
Yeah.
And they were very cool. And one of the things that I learned from her was that we are 10 years behind where they
Mm-hmm.
are in medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And so 10 years prior, a lot of doctors were holding up their hands and saying, what else can I do? This is not the life I wanted. And they kind of pioneered, they MSL roles, medical science liaison. I
Yeah.
think you teach about
Yeah.
that. Those roles were usually only reserved for pharmacists.
Yeah.
And they created an environment where physicians were able to start getting those roles. And I have a friend, Peggy Christian, she's a dentist. She has been an MSL for
Mm-hmm.
many, many years of her career as a dentist. So we
Mm-hmm.
have to show up and begin to say we are these jobs and these different maybe entrepreneurial endeavors aren't already there. We're going to create them. So we will catch up to medicine. We'll just be always probably 10 years after them. It's still happening. We'll just be at our own timeline.
Yeah, I mean, and who knows, maybe we'll create our own timeline, because with the DSOs and the different environments happening in the
Mhm.
dental space, who knows sometimes bubbles burst. Sometimes when you create the option for people, you suddenly realize and you wake up and you see, oh my God, so many people actually wanted this. So hopefully we'll be able to create that shift in perspective and action from a majority of the people, the lovely world of dentistry, right?
Yeah.
Well, Laura, that's the end of our session. I want to thank you again for your time. I think what we're getting into now is really tapping into hopefully the right nerves of many listeners and audience members so that they can actually act on those feelings that they're having. We're validating them by talking about it. We welcome other people to talk about their journeys and be more involved in the work that both you and I are doing in order to create this change. Um, And then I think in the next conversation, let's pick it up and talk about more, observations and trends and how to help people just feel more proud of this beautiful title of dentist, hygienist, whatever dental professional you are. It's time to bring more pride by expanding your career into many different opportunities.
I can't wait. These are the best. I'm so glad we're connecting this way and
Super.
sharing.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna keep doing it. So
Yep.
until the change is created.
That's right. That's right. I guess that means we'll do it forever.
Yeah, I mean, if that's what it takes, I mean, yeah, this
Yeah,
is it.
you won't be able to get rid of me.
No, no, nor
Just
you
saying.
me. It's just gonna
Yeah,
be like, oh, the
exactly.
Laura and Namrata conversation.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
thanks.
see you around. I'll see you next time. Ciao.
Awesome. Bye.